Welcome back. Our next panel is Strengthening Democratic Resilience Against Information Manipulation Through Empowering Media Literacy. The panel is moderated by Aiste Meidute, representing Delphi, Lithuania. Please.
Hello, everybody. I'm sorry that we're standing between you and your lunch, but it's a very important topic that we're going to discuss about now. In the coming hour, I hope we'll know much more about media information literacy, and I often call it the most crucial skill in the 21st century. And we'll see if media literacy could be this answer for strong and resilient democracy. So without further ado, please let me introduce our wonderful panelists today. So with me here is Tommaso Canetta from European Digital Media Observatory, Nadine Gogu from Independent Journalism Center in Moldova, Professor Dr. Guido Kiel, Senior Advisor to the Representative on Freedom of the Media from the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, Roslyn Kratochvil-Moore from Deutsche Welle Academy, and Tamar Kinsurashvili, founder of Me Detector Lab from Georgia. I always like to start all the discussions from the bad news, from the most terrible statistics that I could find, and nowadays it's not so hard to find those numbers. So this year's Reuters digital news report found that global trust in news has remained stagnant and 40%. The same number was last year. Americans do not help to raise this number, as Gallup data shows that trust in media in the United States is at its lowest, at 28%. Also we have a huge problem with people who are avoiding news whatsoever and frame it not as a civic resource but a source of psychological distress. Surprisingly or not, we still have quite a lot of people who have trust in news in Finland, which is often named as the good example of media information literacy practices, and their healthy 67% trust in the news. In this context, Guido, I would like to start with you. You worked as a professor for journalism and media literacy. What is your take on that? How did we come to this situation where people do not trust media, where people avoid news? And what could be the media information literacy role in countries where people struggle with trust in news sources?
Happening at the same time. One is that postmodern societies, they lose trust in institutions in general, they lose trust in science, they lose trust in politics, they lose political processes, they lose trust in what is considered to be societal institutions, and the media is just one part of that. And then there are other factors that we have an overabundance of information, of conflicting information. Everybody can be a sender these days. These are all very banal things that you all know about, but the combination of this and overabundance of information, easy access, the fact that everybody can produce, a general distrust in societal institutions, I think leads to this image. To put it very briefly, I think there are huge differences, as you pointed out, between the countries. I come from a Western European country, Switzerland. The trust is not very high, but there's always been skepticism towards the media. So I think some skepticism towards the media is not bad. I think there have been statistics that say that the highest trust in media is in a country like China, and that's probably not a very good thing to be so trusting into the media in China. So some trust is okay, but I think to the extent, in the example of the United States, as you cited, I think this is worrisome. And this is the first question. You ask more questions than that, sorry.
Definitely. I want to go to OSCE perspective. I know that it published a report fostering media freedom literacy across OSCE region, and it calls on citizens to value independent media as a democratic safeguard. Do you think can literacy initiatives meaningfully strengthen media freedom without ensuring institutional protections for journalists first?
So the alternative would be that we first create a free media system or ensure the safety of journalists and the freedom of journalists, and then we start thinking about media literacy. And I think this would not be a good approach. I think for several reasons. For one, I think strengthening media freedom and strengthening the position of journalism in society is a long-term project with a lot of problems on the way, challenges, and yes, this is something we're working on all the time, and we cannot wait for the media to be free and then start thinking about the audiences. I think we have to work on all different levels and strengthening media literacy and strengthening the understanding why free media are important, or media freedom literacy is one perspective that we should take into consideration besides everything else we do to ensure media freedom.
Tommaso, talking about different perspectives and embracing different methods to work with media information literacy, I know that EDMO's recent work spans from public-facing media literary education, such as Beyond Light Smart campaign, and capacity building for practitioner networks as well. Could you briefly outline how these initiatives advance EDMO's broader goal of building Europe's resilience to information manipulation?
Of course, thank you for the question. First, can I attach to the discussion that was ongoing, because I think we should be more cheerful. Honestly, the situation is bad, but it's also true that democratic forces are not deploying their full arsenal yet. And media literacy can be much more powerful than it is already. I think, for example, in fact-checking, we have an issue having the full power of democratic state institutions behind us because of independence reason, while in media literacy, it would be actually something that I would welcome to have, Ministry of Education inserting media literacy in all the countries of Europe. And I heard that this happened in Moldova. I'm very happy about that. I know it's happening in Finland. This is good. In Italy, not at all, for example. And I think many other countries are in the same position. And also, not just for the young ones, also for elder people. Public broadcasters, they should do media literacy. In Italy, in the 50s, we had TV programs teaching people reading and writing because the population was highly illiterate. We are in a similar situation now, media-wise, so there is so much room that we can cover to do better and to have impact on the awful numbers you mentioned. That being said, I come to your questions. So first, very, very quick introduction, because I don't know if anybody is familiar with EDMO. EDMO is the European Digital Media Observatory, is, I think, the biggest, or one of the biggest program funded by the EU to fight disinformation. It brings together experts from different fields, journalism, fact-checking, media literacy, academia, research, and so on. We have a central structure, EDMO EU, and 15 hubs, national or regional, that cover all the European Union, plus Norway, and now with the last hub added, FACT, we cover also Moldova, so I'm very happy to be here, and Ukraine. Also the fact-checking network of EDMO in the next phase that will start in 2026 will expand to integrate fact-checking organizations from Moldova and other, not EU country, but European countries. So you will be hearing more from me. Coming to the question, yeah, I think that the added value that EDMO has is to actually foster unity and coordination. Geographically, so I said we have a very wide scope, but also thematically. So the two campaigns you mentioned, media literacy campaigns that was deployed, definitely benefited by being, thought and developed by experts coming from different fields, from different countries, bridging, of course, the differences that are existing, but also going in deep in the nuances that exist also at the local level. And one of them was about, algorithm literacy, and I think we all know how important is that. And the other one was immediately before the elections in 2024. I think they were quite effective. Also, Admo has, you know, quite a leverage, also in Brussels, but also with platforms. So it benefited these two campaigns. They benefited from credits given by platforms, so they can be shared more widely. But also, I think the other thing you mentioned, the guidelines, are very, very much important because, again, this cooperation, this unity struggle that Admo brings forward, it increased the effectiveness of media literacy initiatives because, you know, disinformation aims at weakening us by dividing us. If we have different experts from different countries, from different thematic areas, all sending the same message, even if declined in different ways at the local level, it's much harder for our adversaries to fight against us. They start looking like the guy that calls the police saying, hey, everybody in the highway is going in the wrong direction. You are going in the wrong direction because you are to face a, let's say, critical mass of experts coming from different nations and different areas of expertise that all send the same message, even though in different ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Tommaso. I really like that you mentioned the need of formal education of media information literacy. Definitely it's not enough to know how to read only in 21st century. Rosalind, I know that Deutsche Welle Academy works a lot with media information literacy and emphasizes these interactive participatory methods. From your practice, which interactive formats could you mention that really work teaching media information literacy? What's your take on that?
Okay, first I really want to say I'm honored to be on this panel and to be with Tommaso and Guido and Nadine and Tamar, and especially Nadine and Tamar, because I first met Nadine and Tamar in 2017 in Tbilisi. And it was setting up international media and information literacy expert network full of global international MIL pioneers who were doing incredible work in their respective countries, and we were bringing them together for peer exchange and learning. And that was back in 2017, and this was already a time when Nadine and Tamar had already done so much in Moldova, in Georgia, regarding media literacy. And so to be here today and to see everything that's been achieved over the last eight years is also quite inspiring, and I'm humbled to be here. For DW Academy, you're right. We've been working on MIL since 2013. So it's been a long journey. We work in over 20 countries on MIL with partners like MDF, like the ICJ. And we have, over the years, developed a very interactive, participatory, fun approach to media literacy. We have a very strong competency base, which is based on 5 competencies: access, analyze, reflect, create, reflect, and act. And as the German international media broadcaster, we are DW, our kind of entry point has always been on create. And that's where our expertise is. And it did start early on with newsroom simulations, with newspapers on walls in schools in the West Bank and things like that. And what has evolved over the last 10, 11, 12 years is that this real gamification, storytelling approach has proven the most useful in terms of having actual behavior change. And that's what we're trying to see with media literacy, is behavior change. And so what we've really adopted with a community-led approach that can be scaled but doesn't have to be is gamification, board games, really haptic, ludic style things with disinformation Jenga, with heroes and villains storytelling concept that we developed, where we actually gave a personification of heroes to these 5 competency areas to really make it tangible, make it accessible, and to have fun. And then what we've developed in the last 2 years in Ukraine has been stand-up comedy with young people, and really using improvisation, so a masterclass in improvisation, and then young people actually going into a comedy club, the first time round was in Berlin last year, and last week it was in Lviv, where they actually are able to break down these topics in fun, engaging ways that resonate, people laugh, they have fun, they remember, and it has an impact in actual behavior later. And so we have experience of our heroes and villains concept is so kind of all over the world, kind of developed. In India, it's extremely important also for not just behavior change, but attitudinal change. So actually covering difficult topics, which are quite often the ones that are kind of good fuel for disinformation, and to actually be able to have these conversations through role play, through using storytelling, which is in every single culture in the world. Humans love storytelling. It is different in different parts of the world, but it's still there and it's adapted. And this creates this ability to create and to create your own story and to tell your own stories in different ways and to discuss. And this is the other thing that's really important. Very little of our media literacy thing is in isolation. Yes, we're looking at the individual and how they navigate this increasingly complex media environment, how they have the tools and the competencies and the confidence to actually be active participant members of their societies. But these discussions and the behavior change actually happens in group.
Thank you, Tamar. I know that your organization collaborated with Deutsche Welle Academy on a lot of topics, including media information literacy. And in media information literacy area, you conducted a successful youth-oriented project teaching young people from selected countries how to recognize false information, how to use verification tools, and OSINT techniques. Was it successful? What do you think proved to be the best methods that you used, and could it really reflect the changes in behavior, things like that? When young people go to the ballot boxes, could it actually change the outcome, how they see politicians and how they see democracy?
Thank you, Aiste. Indeed, we did a lot with Deutsche Welle Academy, but initially I want to touch upon the general approach, because mostly we are discussing media literacy from securitization perspective. And this is not only problem, because as Roslyn mentioned, it's about access to information and creation of content. And it's about the changing behavior, because not only media are responsible for creation of content, but media consumers as well. That's require change of mind, because they are also responsible for distribution of content in this media ecosystem. It's not only journalists who should take responsibility in this regard. And like to show this example when I do the media literacy trainings, how one Georgian Facebook user decided to test vulnerability of mainstream media. He posted this picture and the post was about the Georgian student who was admitted by leading US university. The news per se is very positive, but he used the picture of porno star Stoya. The mainstream media amplified this news without verification who was on this picture. And all Georgia, they were happy with success of Georgian students, and they were congratulating her with admission in US university. This was not intentional news to mislead someone, just to test how media verifies the story and how vulnerable they are to even not harmful content. But when we deal with harmful content, when intention is to harm society and create clashes and conflicts based on identity, whether it's ethnic, religious, or sexual, consequences are much severe. So what we have did, we are using the complex approach. We are not only teaching how to debunk disinformation, but how to access credible information. It's easy to find any information in digital space, and because of distrust of mainstream media, which sometimes is artificially created by autocratic leaders as well. On the one hand, they are joining global initiatives to introduce media literacy in schools, but with another hand, they are creating parallel fact-checking, parallel media ethic councils to discredit media. And it's mimicking democracy rather than creating the open space for discussion. So even media makes mistakes, it's natural. That's why we need media self-regulation institutions in place to allow public to challenge the unethical reporting. And we need strong institutions and transparency of sources, because sometimes someone creates a fake BBC or fake CNN and people think they are sharing the real one on social media. Because of pressure of time, it's difficult to do fact-checking after you are tired, after working hours. But this changing behavior also means that society should acknowledge their own responsibility in this complex media ecosystem. So our approach is to identify problem, deconstruct, and then track transparency of sources and explain method used in manipulating public opinion. So we have trained more than 5,000 people since 2017, including 1,000 teachers. As regard to our joint project with Deutsche Welle Academy, it's Myth Detector Lab based on our fact-checking platform experience, and we use learning by doing approach. We have internships where students are able to produce articles with mentorship of our editors, and it's about allowing them to exercise this knowledge in practice, and our slogan is discover truth yourself. Nobody likes to be told that they are wrong, and fact-checking is not most convincing method in this regard, but equipping people, youngsters especially, with necessary tools, how to differentiate harmful information from real one is our goal. I will stop here and I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Tamar. I want to turn to Nadine, and I'm very happy to be here in Moldova, in this very resistant country that showed a great promise after the election results. I know that Independent Journalism Center has been active with inclusive media information literacy initiatives and protecting independent media in Moldova. Which media literacy interventions did you find the most useful? And to what extent do you think successful media literacy interventions can contribute to the election results?
Thank you for the question. First of all, I would like to thank organizers for including on the agenda of this conference the media literacy topic, which actually is a strategic objective of IGC. And we've been done a lot of programs and works during the last 10 years on promoting media information literacy. Going back to your question, indeed, given the highly polarized information space, but also the high degree of exposure of population to foreign propaganda or online disinformation, we at IGC adopted a twofold approach. We bring the media and information literacy closer to audiences, and at the same time we help journalists, we help media to be more transparent, accountable, to produce high quality content. And in the past years, as I mentioned, we conducted a lot of programs, but the most efficient, in our opinion, are three types of interventions. First of them is media information literacy programs in schools. And here I can talk hours about this issue, but of course we have only 5 minutes, so I will try to be short. We started back in 2014. We worked with Deutsche Welle Academy, but afterwards also some other international partners like Internews, International Media Support joined this effort. And finally we had course, media education course, which is optional discipline introduced in the national curricula. We have a very good partnership with the Ministry of Education. So now we have hundreds of teachers trained, thousands, actually, speaking in figures, we have over 20,000 pupils and students who studied media education course. I mean, they took this course in classes. At the same time, in the past years, we were involved in a project in which we pilot the integration of media and information literacy concept into mandatory disciplines, and we hope very much that in the revised national curricula in 2027 we'll have media and information literacy concept introduced. We hope, and it seems that it will be okay. I'm not going. I'm not a fortune teller, but I still hope that it will be okay. Going back to the second type of intervention, the community-based media information literacy, we organized a lot of workshops for students in universities, for adult population. We actually reached also kids through a puppet show through which we promote media, critical thinking skills. We translated media education textbook into Braille for people with a visual impairment. We produced a number of materials, video materials for people with hearing impairment. So we've conducted a lot of programs to make sure that we also reach not only students in schools or pupils, but also other types of population. And the last one, but not the least, it's the transparency and accountability tools. We are monitoring media during years, especially in election campaigns, but not only. And for instance, in the last election campaigns, we monitored traditional media like TV stations, but also Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, social media. We understood that it's very important to be there and to see how this information is spread around and what kind of techniques, manipulation techniques do the propagandists or, you know, the political actors use to influence the public opinion. And yes, we have Media Radar platform, which is a very good, in our opinion, platform that help media to be more transparent and at the same time to be more accountable, and at the same time helps media consumers to understand which web platforms are reliable and which are not. So how do you measure? Usually when it comes to trainings or workshops or in schools, it's easier because we have pre and post questionnaires. We assess if participants in these trainings learn something about the workshop or about the course they took. But at the same time, we also like to assess and analyze the surveys to see if the audience of reliable media increased or not in the past years, because it's also an indicator, I would say. Regarding the last part of your question about the past elections, well, of course, I don't have a research study. We don't have data to say that, yes, because of our efforts, civil society efforts, the Moldovans became more media literate, and that's why they voted like they voted. We have to take into account also other factors like European aspirations, for instance, or geopolitical realities. But of course, media and information literacy has and had a significant role to play in this context. And I think that some of voters, they took our class that is taught in schools, but also attended many activities organized by civil society organizations in Moldova. And yes, judging by the fact that social media is the main source of information in Moldova for most Moldovans, and given that the disinformation and propaganda campaigns are widespread through online media, and now we have these results, that means that most Moldovans are, to a certain extent, media literate, and they could assess the information, check the information, and in the end, they voted like they voted. Thanks.
Thank you, Nadine. I want to turn to the audience now. I think we still have 10-15 minutes for questions.
Hello, my name is Daria Larionov, and I represent the organization called Global Network of Women Peace Builders. And what we do is we promote UN Security Council resolutions on women, peace and security, and youth peace and security. So basically, I have two questions. They are kind of combined for Nadine and Tamar. I basically very like how Nadine mentioned about pre- and post-evaluation forms during the workshops when you hold a media literacy training. But my question is like how both of you try to ensure the long-term impact of media literacy programs. And at the same time, my question is how do you ensure the trust in media literacy programs in fragile democracies context, like in Moldova and Georgia? Thank you very much.
So, should we accept one question and then...
Thank you, Nina Robakidze. My question is regarding the initiatives that in some countries government is taking in terms of the media literacy, and what are your observations, how those proved successful and not, and what are the main factors that actually make them work or not work in different parts of the country. So this question is to everyone on the panel actually who might have an answer to this question.
Well, I will answer the last question about the state institutions initiatives. Some time ago, actually 3 or 4 years ago, we started a project through which we wanted to have the government state institutions involved in promoting media information literacy through different means. And I can say right now that we succeeded, since the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Culture a year ago, they signed an interministerial plan. And they introduced on their action plans on yearly basis different activities that promote media information literacy. So we believe that it's very good. Of course, civil society is still here, and of course we have a lot of work to do and help the state institutions because they don't have enough resources, human resources, but also expertise. So yeah, we rely on international also donors and international partners. But the state institutions have to be here and to promote also media literacy. And about the second question was about the evaluation or assessment of students or after workshops. As we even succeeded to conduct a comparative study in the beginning of the year, academic year, when students just started studying media education, and in the end, and we saw some increase regarding critical thinking skills, and it was the results were okay.
I will also respond on these questions. Actually, like Nadine, we also assess through questionnaires the outcome of our trainings, but we also try to do some surveys to identify problems based on different age groups. And most vulnerable groups are elderly. However, in terms of sustainability, if you are not cooperating with government where it's possible, or donor community, it's difficult to implement and reach all groups of society. That's why cooperation of state and non-state institutions is important. Sometimes there is overlap in donor funding as well. Working with youth much easier because they are more open, they are amplifiers, but working with elderly teachers is much important because they are most exposed segment of society. We don't have such coordination right now in Georgia. There was an attempt by Council of Europe, and at this moment we are under investigation because donors helped, Western donors, us to train these 5,000 people in Georgia for resilience building of Georgian society. And I come here to the next question. We have the regulator authorized to implement and coordinate the different policies on media literacy, and they really do some work with help of UNICEF, but at the same time they launched a parallel institution to the Media Ethic Commission, Charter of Journalistic Ethics, to discredit media. So these are two parallel counterproductive measures applied to create distrust and to undermine trust in media. And this is a problem in case of Georgia. So.
Can I also give an answer to the question, even though I wasn't asked? I would like to add something from my own experience when it comes to the effect or the long-term effects of media literacy activities. This is based on my experience from Switzerland, which might not be very relevant in this context here, but maybe it's still inspiring. I was involved in the education of students and teachers in teaching about media literacy, about the media, and we always differentiated between the knowledge, what do the students know, what can they do, and what do they actually do. And we found that with students, teenagers, they were usually very good at knowing things. They knew a lot better what fake news were. They were much better at the skill, also knowing what to do. They knew how to differentiate between disinformation and real news, much better than their parents, for example. But then when we talked to them, what kind of media do you use? How do you know about the world? It was TikTok. It was all the sources that they knew were of low quality, were not really conducive to an understanding of the world. And maybe the pressure is not as big as in Moldova or in Georgia for young people to understand, but in this environment where what I'm familiar with, the question was always, how can we motivate the students, the young people? I'm not talking about the adults, it's a different story, but how can we motivate the young people to actually implement the skills that they have, the knowledge that they have? And this is where media freedom literacy comes in. It's media freedom literacy, and that's what the OSCE has been working on, is trying to explain to people, or to not only get the knowledge into their heads how journalism works and why a blogger is maybe not as good a source as a quality newspaper, but also motivate them to change their media habits. And I'm talking about habits, and these are very enshrined. And another thing is that we always assume that people want to know the solid news and the truth, but that's not why we use media. That's not why I use media. I use media to entertain myself also. And most of the people are probably like that. And I've just talked to someone in Armenia who told me, yeah, I know all these Russian programs are all crap, but they have the best entertainment programs. So that's why in the end, I end up watching Russian television, not the Armenian local ones. It's kind of like with food. We know exactly if we eat carrot juice or if we eat carrots and drink water, then we'll be fine. But we'll never do that. And especially young people won't do that. They drink their energy drinks and they eat their fast food because they want to belong to the group, peer group. Same with media. It's cheaper. Same with media. And So there's a huge gap between what they know, the competence, and the performance. And I think that's the challenge. I mean, this is not against what Tamar and Nadine are doing, not at all, of course. But the question is, how can we overcome the step from competence to performance?
Thank you. Answering the second question about what made successful media literacy campaigns, at least in my experience, and what we can do in the future, I think first, internationalism, it's absolutely important because it's much easier for a Georgian autocrat to attack the Georgian organization working at the Georgian level. But if that is a part of an effort carried out also by Germany, UK, France, Italy, Spain, Poland, Latvia, Finland, you name it, it becomes much, much harder to discredit that. Second, and I think this is linked to the last thing the expert said, yes, of course, theory is important, but also it's very important what the young ones, but also, in general, user citizens, they see in practice. So I think that multidisciplinarity, it's very effective. So you have media literacy experts, maybe they come from universities, research academia, but also having journalists, fact-checkers that see what they see on a daily basis, and they can tell that that is hurting also, the young ones or the eldest, and so provide very concrete examples of scams, of things that you thought were true, and then when you discover they were not, enraged you. We can leverage that emotions positively toward having, a better information space. Thank you.
Do we have
something? Thanks. I want to add to the question about kind of government overreach and co-optation of media literacy, because this is a challenge we have all over the world. But it's a growing challenge in Europe. And it's a growing challenge in Northern Europe. I have been recently, over the last couple of years, in many, many meetings where defense is linked to media literacy. And it's politicized. And this is really dangerous for our democracy. It's really dangerous for media literacy. I think things like the Ministry of Defense in Sweden that says their work is media literacy is really, really bad for all of us, because it's still state-sponsored propaganda, whether we like it, whether it speaks to us or not. And our job here is not to be political. It's to teach the students and the young people, whoever it is, old people, whoever we're seniors, whoever we're working with, to look for lots of sources, to look for lots, and to be able to recognize and to be able to see where these narratives come from, and to be able to choose for themselves. But it's not about state-sponsored propaganda under the guise of media literacy. And so I think we've got a strong job here. We do work with ministries of education in many, many countries. And we've got one of our long-term goals is to get MIL into national curricula. But we also have to then also work with civil society and cross-border, as said. But this is really a challenge that we all have. And it's really important that the basic true essence of what media literacy is about is held. So.
Thank you. Do we have more questions? I think not. So I want to thank all my wonderful panelists for their remarks. To sum up, we started with a very dark note, and it was made deliberately because we can end on a very much cheerful tone. Then we started. I think we can conclude that media literacy initiatives has a great prospect of creating more resilient people, more resilient democracies, if they are conducted well. And if cooperation factor is kept in mind, as well as the good metrics how to measure if these initiatives are successful. So I hope that all the people from very different organizations who in the future are planning to engage in media information literacy initiatives, or maybe they already do this very important job, will take into account that you have to be very brave doing these initiatives. You don't need to be afraid of experiment with different formats. Media nowadays is like a clay. It can be molded into very different formats, reaching a very different audience. So it's very important to have this goal of having more resilient, stronger democracy in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Update about how we're going to proceed. We're going to have a lunch break right now for 30 minutes. We will be expecting you back at 2 p.m. for 2 workshops on AI open source intelligence. One is going to be held here. It's Mantis Analytics, and another one, Let's Data, is going to be upstairs.